Frau Brechenmacher Attends a Wedding is a short story by Katherine Mansfield. This short story is from the perspective of a third-person anonymous narrator. From the surface, it is a story about a woman attending a wedding with her husband, but the underlying idea of the tale is to highlight the unequal gender roles and marital relations of the late 19th century German society, where women were oppressed and were also involved in suppressing others from the domineering men. This short story portrays Frau in a subordinate role as a housewife to her more daunting husband. Mansfield's deliberate choice of consistently referring to her Brechenmacher as the father imparts a sense of distance, emphasizing his importance as a patriarchal figure and further accentuating the family's hierarchical structure. This dynamic is visible when Frau threatens her husband's anger to compel her 9-year-old daughter, Rosa, into compliance. Despite Rosa's objections to not sit up later than 8:30, the mere mention of her quells any resistance, suggesting that the potential for violence extends beyond Frau. While ostensibly involving Rosa in wedding preparations, the underlying lesson seems to be teaching her subservience to her father. By allowing Rosa to wear Frau Brechenmacher's shawl, Mansfield hints at the daughter assuming her mother's role and becoming subservient to her father. The act perpetuates a succession of women's servitude, reinforced by Frau's ominous statement, "Girls have a lot to learn." Frau Brechenmacher consistently caters to her husband's needs, positioning herself under his control. Upon his arrival, she prioritizes preparing his clothes for the wedding over her own readiness. Instead of allowing her Brechenmacher to prepare his own clothes, Frau Brechenmacher, along with Rosa, assumes the responsibility. As they walk to and back from the wedding, her walks ahead, suggesting an unspoken hierarchy that Frau must adhere to. Even as she struggles, her Brechenmacher strode ahead. She stumbled after him. The wedding scene features gender separation, with men and women occupying separate spaces. The open back of Frau Brechenmacher's skirt symbolizes her neglect of self-care, consumed by her dedication to her husband. Mansfield intentionally withholds Frau Brechenmacher's first name, emphasizing the loss of identity experienced by married women and highlighting gender inequality. While weddings are typically associated with joy, Frau Letterman and Frau Rupp engage in gossip at this supposedly happy occasion, focusing on the revelation that the groom is not the father of the bride's child, deeming it inappropriate for the child to be present. Both women pass judgment based on their traditional perspectives that that's what I call a sin against the church for a freeborn child to attend its own mother's wedding. The women refer to the child by it instead of her name or using the female pronouns, thus indicating how they view the illegitimate child as an object to be shunned. The bride's reluctance to marry the groom is palpable as the bride, who remained very still, with a little vacant smile on her lips, only her eyes shifting uneasily from side to side. The bride, named Teresa, had hysterics and said that she would not marry this man. They had to get the priest to her so that the intervention of a priest could persuade her to marry. Instead of relishing the celebration, Frau Brechenmacher feels embarrassed during her husband's possibly intoxicated speech. Her reaction to the wedding gift given by her Brechenmacher is noteworthy. She stands out as the sole person not joining in laughter. Frau Brechenmacher recognizes the symbolic weight of the gift, mirroring the course of her own life, married with 5 children and devoid of personal agency. The realization dawns upon her that her husband and children have dictated her existence. Referring to her as the little Frau when she gets into bed implies a stunted growth or development for Frau. Mansfield further depicts her lying in bed with her arm across her face like a child, conveying Frau's emotional state, possibly reflecting her sense of arrested development. This could stem from a life confined to marriage with 5 children, lacking the opportunity to shape her own identity. Mansfield dips into her Brechenmacher's egocentrism and his apparent absence of affection for his wife, revealing the objectifying lens through which he views her. Upon his return home, her demands, "Now, then, where are my clothes?" cried her Brechenmacher. "Nothing ready, of course," with a sarcastic tone suggesting a lack of acknowledgement for his wife's labors. The authoritative tone and possessive use of "my" accentuate his dominance and indifference toward his wife and children. His dismissive command, "There isn't room to turn. I want the light. You go and dress," in the passage, highlights his self-centered nature and showcases a lack of consideration for his wife's feelings. The symbolic significance of light as a spotlight accentuates her Brechenmacher's arrogance, craving attention and reinforcing his selfishness. He took a piece of the crumb, wiped it round his plate edge, and held it up to her mouth, shows his disrespect for his wife as he infantilizes her. The crumb's symbolism as leftovers further stresses his disregard for her well-being, as he gives her his discarded and useless bits. The symbolism of food extends from physical to sexual appetite, and when her satisfies his physical hunger, he looked up at her, grinning, indicating a shift towards fulfilling his sexual desires. Mansfield utilizes Hare's treatment of his wife to communicate how men tend to objectify their spouses, viewing them merely as instruments for satisfying sexual appetites. This perspective is highlighted at the end of the story, where the Frau lies on her bed, anticipating potential harm as she expected to be hurt as her Brechenmacher lurched in. The choice of lurches in emphasizes the significant emotional distance between Frau and her husband, highlighting their profound disconnect. Despite their marital bond, the portrayal of Hare's entry enhances Mansfield's perspective on women as accessories, existing primarily for the pleasure of their partners. Thus, Mansfield emphasizes the woman's diminished power and an objectified tool within the marital dynamic, depicting the bride as akin to the appearance of an iced cake all ready to be cut and served in neat little pieces to the bridegroom beside her. This imagery emphasizes the woman's objectification and her assigned role of pleasing her husband in the marriage. Mansfield crafts a pervasive atmosphere of male dominance by detailing the authority and power wielded by men over women. The portrayal of a loveless marriage suggests that societal norms, rather than genuine affection, bind the couple together. Frau Brechenmacher remains under her husband's control, whether acquiescing willingly or passively accepting this dominance. Like many married women, she acknowledges the inevitability of enduring her husband's mistreatment, which Frau Rupp refers to as every wife has her cross. Isn't that true, my dear? However, like other wives, she takes no action to prevent this mistreatment. The closing line, "She lay down on the bed and put her arm across her face like a child who expected to be hurt," serves as a foreshadowing of the perpetuation of this destructive cycle, highlighting the lack of agency wives have within their marriages. While Frau recognizes the lovelessness and despair in her marriage, she remains inactive. Her awareness is obvious in moments such as she wanted to go home and never come out again. She imagined that all these people were laughing at her. More people than there were in the room even, all laughing at her because they were so much stronger than she was.